Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is John Mason. I'm the Director of Special Projects for the Arizona International Film Festival. And I welcome panelists and viewers to a very exciting and relevant session. What do filmmakers do? What do filmmakers do? That's a good one too. We're going to add that later. What do film commissioners do? And we have with us, and they're going to tell us who they are. Obviously, we have a panel of distinguished film commissioners. This is the 30th anniversary of the Arizona International Film Festival. We're off to a smoking start. We've got all kinds of things going on. This is one of a number of Zoom panel discussions. Much more to come. Please check out our website for additional information. We're going to explore this topic of film commissioning in detail. First, what I would like to do is start with Mr. Visit Tucson himself. I'd like to ask each of the film commissioners to tell us who they are, what their title is, and what they were doing before they were film commissioners. Peter?
Hi. My name is Peter Catalanotte. I'm the director of Film Tucson. I've been there about 21 years. Prior to this, I was at the film library at the University of Arizona and did that for a number of years and enjoyed both. That's it.
Matthew.
Hi, I'm Matthew Earl Jones, director of Arizona Film and Digital Media. And before I took that job, I was a commercial line producer in Los Angeles.
Freddy.
Hi, I'm Freddy Cabral. I'm film commissioner of Sonora State in Mexico. Good afternoon, John, Matthew, Peter, John, Chiri. I'm film commissioner. Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. A word to the Zoom, to the people out in Zoom land. If you have a question that you would like to ask, please type it in the chat session, and we will get to those questions a little bit later on. So if you have a question, please type it into the chat session. And again, before we begin, I'd like to start a little softly. Yesterday was a very interesting day for the film festival. Two interesting things happened, and one of them is actually both of them are very much related to two gentlemen on the panel. In the afternoon yesterday, we had a panel that dealt with a very powerful production that happened here in Tucson, and I'd like Peter to maybe summarize that session in a sentence or two. And then later that evening, we had a very, very compelling evening under the stars. We had State Sonora, and Freddie, maybe you could tell us a little bit about that event. Peter, what happened yesterday at the seminar?
So yesterday there was a seminar talking about how the city, county, and state and our office, Visit Tucson, collaborated to bring in the first episode of an upcoming HBO TV series called Duster. And it was pretty successful. They spent $10 million here and hired almost 500 actors and almost 200 local crew. It was really exciting. 9,797 hotel room nights, which is a big deal for us. Overall, it was really great. And the panel, there were the audience had some good questions. My fellow panelists had some great insights. It was a good experience overall.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Freddie, tell us a little bit about State Sonora.
Hey, I'm in Spanish. I'm sorry. Bueno, yo estuve ya como comisionado fílmico hace algunos años y ahorita estamos regresando. Apenas hace unos meses que estamos iniciando nuevamente aquí en la Comisión Fílmica. Traemos algunos planes con Matthew, principalmente con Peter, para trabajar en conjunto los dos estados y bueno, vendernos a nivel mundial como una sola zona, ¿no? De este gran desierto de Sonora y Arizona que compartimos muchísimas locaciones y nos complementamos con otras más.
John, do you want to tell us what? John Sheedy? I think you might be muted. John, I think
John Mason, I'm not muted.
TJ, can you help us out on this one? John is saying he's not muted. I think while we're trying to straighten this out with our interpreting and sound system, let me move on to more of the substance of the agenda here today. So we have three very distinguished film commissioners with us. But before we have a film, in order to have a film commissioner, we need a film commission office. And as we know, most of us, there are hundreds and hundreds of these offices around the world in probably over 100 countries. So we have a very large thing going on. And so I would like to ask, starting with Matthew, what does a film commission office do? What is the role and purpose of a film commission office?
Well, I think we have two roles. I think when people call us, our job is to provide customer service. So I think people will call a film commission, sometimes not knowing which film commission to call. They may call Peter when they need to talk to Flagstaff or something like that, but they may call me when it's not state property. But in general, for people who call us, we're really like a customer service manager. Our job is to connect that person with whatever resources they need within that area, whether it's the state, the city, the county, to get the job done. And even now, on these kind of panels, when we are outbound, we're really brand managers, brand ambassadors. You know, when Peter spoke at the AAED, he had the numbers and all the information for the impact in Tucson, and he was really representing his product was the city of Tucson and that surrounding area. So we're either a brand manager out there selling, or we're a customer service rep trying to provide great service. And, you know, Peter's been doing it a lot longer than I have, so I would yield to any of his input.
That's a very smooth segue. Peter, what's the purpose of a film office?
Peter, I think you're muted.
I'm muted, sorry. I try and mute in between talks and then I forget to unmute. I would agree with everything Matthew said and add to that. We wear a lot of different hats depending on who's contacting us. When the filmmaker is contacting us, we are pitching our region, be it the state, the city, county, whatever it is you're at, as a location for filming, and we're trying to get them the information they need and to make their job easy. That's the number one thing. They don't want to deal with bureaucrats. They don't want to deal with too much red tape. They want things to be easy. So that's what we try and do for them. Once they are filming, then we're the liaison between the filmmakers and the government entities they're having to deal with if they're shutting down a street or filming in a government building or in front of it, what have you. We're the liaison between those two groups. Once they have finished filming, we gather the numbers of how many people they hired, how much money they spent, which hotels they stayed at, because we have to report that to our government funders, which in my case is City of Tucson and Pima County. And then the board of directors of Visit Tucson. Every film office is different. Ours is about tourism dollars. Others might just be economic development. They might be part of a city or county's economic development office. So it just kind of depends on where they're located.
Thank you very much. Freddie, would you like to weigh in on this?
Recording in progress.
John, can you hear us? Yeah, we're still not getting sound from John. Freddie, can you hear us? Well, we're going to try to sort out, excuse me. Again, we're going to keep trying to sort out the connection here with John and Freddie. Let me turn then, and I think Peter was starting to get into this. We have a film officer now. Could you elaborate a little bit more on what your specific functions are? What do you do in office? Matthew, what are your day-to-day activities?
My day-to-day activities, again, are handling pretty much any incoming inquiries for any filmmaker, whether it's a TV show, a feature, a commercial, a music video, a still shoot, pretty much anywhere in the state, for assistance in what they need to do to make that happen. A lot of times, especially in a place like Tucson, which has a very strong film commission and like a long history of a relationship with California, a lot of people will contact them directly. But in other parts of the state, more remote parts of the state, they may call us and ask us for help getting a permit, finding locations, finding crew. So a good part of our time is providing that level of support. In addition, is one thing that, and Peter can address this, the HBO project that came to Tucson was the largest thing that's come to the state in certainly in the 20 years that I've been here. Well, maybe the Kingdom would be comparable, but it's largest thing to come here in over a decade. And I think it showed a couple of things. I think it showed that Arizona has everything that a filmmaker could want, but that it also, I think, showed that we really need to keep developing our infrastructure and our crew base. So a lot of what we do on a state level is to try to create programs working with other film commissions. We have a training program that Peter was very instrumental in helping, and he can talk to the success of it, but we did one in Tucson and it went very well. So we help out with projects statewide and also try to create projects, try to create programs to market the state.
Peter, what that's quite a load that you guys carry. You mentioned an example. Could we probe a bit more into the reporting mechanisms? You've got City of Tucson, you have Pima County. What kind of numbers do you have to get them, to convince them that you're doing your job? Frankly, do they want to know? Do they want to know numbers of production, revenue, labor hours? I mean, how many people are hired? What do you have to put on the table there?
Sure. So we gather all of that and more. We document the number of projects that have called us total, and which ones have become definites, as we term it. And so we get a lot of calls for a lot of projects. Some of them don't work out, and it's not seen necessarily to do with us. Maybe we didn't have the kind of desert they were looking for, or they wanted a location that wasn't available on the date they were filming. So that's a call we got, but we didn't get the project. But then when we get the project, we document everything. We have to do an estimate of what they spent. They don't always let us know that, and they rarely let us know that. We use a calculation developed by the Association of Film Commissioners International. It's an international organization for film offices, film commissions such as ours. We get training on how to track those numbers. We keep track of how many local people they hired, local crew and local actors. We keep track of how many out-of-town crew they brought in, how many out-of-town actors they brought in. We keep track of hotel room nights because we're part of the tourism office. The hotel bed tax is a big part of what funds us. So what's great there is if a project comes in and they hire a lot of locals, crew and actors, that's fantastic. But if they decide to bring a lot of their group in, which sometimes happens, it's a director's prerogative, a producer's prerogative. It's a positive for us as well in that Tucson still gets the money through the form of hotel room nights. So to us, it's all a positive. So we track all that and give monthly statistics to the city, county, and then Visit Tucson as a whole, our board of directors. And then we compile it at the end of the fiscal year as well. Our fiscal year runs from July 1st all the way back to June 30th.
Freddie, are you with us? Can we, well, I'm very sorry about this. This is a guy all of the hard questions are for Freddie. John Sheedy, can you hear us?
Yeah, oh, good.
John. Oh.
Ok, yo sí escucho, pero no sé bien cuál es la pregunta, the question.
He's saying he didn't hear the question, John Mason. He didn't hear the question.
The question, Freddie, was what kind of numbers, what kind of data and information do you have to provide the people in your office that you report to? Numbers of productions, revenue, types of productions, feature, documentary, TV shows, music video, commercials. What kind of information do you need to provide to keep your office funded and going?
Sí. Bueno, contestaré en español. Igual como comentó Matthew y Peter, los proyectos, digo, también de una comisión aquí en México, pues no nomás son películas y documentales, sino es extenso los music videos, photoshoot, ¿no? Atendemos varios proyectos, cortometrajes, etcétera, y muchas veces son proyectos nacionales, proyectos de aquí mismo de México con fondos de gobierno, que hay algunos fondos de gobierno federal que apoyan la industria, y obviamente pues lo que buscamos son proyectos también de Estados Unidos, de algunas otras partes del mundo, que a lo largo de la historia en Sonora han llegado, no tantos como Arizona, pero sí tenemos algunos proyectos en la historia, ¿no? Fílmica de aquí, y muchos en trabajo coordinado con Arizona. Hay muchas películas en varias décadas que se han trabajado en las dos partes de la frontera, en Arizona y Sonora. I'm sorry for speaking in Spanish.
No problem. Peter, could you, John, are you there? Peter, could you get a gist of that?
Sure. My Spanish isn't so good. I can understand a little bit. Maybe it would be a little bit easier. I could speak about Film Tucson's role in working with Mexico since 2000, back when Steven Soderbergh contacted our office. His production team contacted our office. They had a film at the time called Traffic, which came out in 2000. So actually it was 1999 they contacted us. and they wanted to film a border town. So we took Steven Soderbergh and his team to Nogales, Arizona, which he liked, and it seemed like they were going to film there. But because we were right next to the wall, he asked, "Could we just go into Mexico and just for just for giggles, let's go look at Mexico?" And once we went into Mexico, he was sold, because Mexico has such a unique look, and the density and the people and the sounds. So that was our first experience facilitating a film production in Mexico. We reached out to our counterparts in Nogales, and we reached out to the consulate in Tucson and various Mexican officials in the federal government. And we had a sort of a roundtable and sat down with everyone to make sure the filmmakers conveyed what they needed to do in Mexico and what the officials in Mexico could do to help the filmmakers. We had interpreters there, and in short, we just made everything happen. So that was kind of the beginning for us back in 1999 of facilitating projects in Mexico and working with people like Freddy and others in the film commissions in Mexico. And since then, we've done a number of others. There was a George Clooney film called Confessions of a Dangerous Mind that shot in Nogales, and we helped facilitate that. There's a TV series from Mexico called Run, Coyote, Run. It only plays in Spanish-speaking countries, so it's kind of hard to find here in the US, but they filmed the first 2 seasons partially along our border, and we helped set that up. And then a feature film called 600 Miles, directed by Gabriel Ripstein, and won some awards at the Berlin Film Festival. That takes place on both sides of the border, and we helped set that up as well. So we've done a lot of cross-border production, and thanks to people like Freddie and Ricky over in Hermosillo, we're looking forward to doing more of that. It's always a great experience.
I think you've touched on a very, very important initiative, and I'd like to turn the baton over to Matthew to embellish this a little bit. In my research for this, and in talking with Matthew, there's the initiative Film Without Borders and the 300 Mile Zone initiative,
So
which are extremely important to Mexico and the U.S. Matthew, could you fill us in a little bit on those initiatives?
sure. Well, as Peter has alluded to, Southern Arizona and Northern Mexico have always had a great cross-border relationship, both culturally and in terms of commerce. And there's no reason and why that can't apply to film, and indeed has, as Peter alluded to. The state back in 2019 signed an agreement with Luis Alberto Gonzalez, who was then the Sonoran State Film Commissioner, and also with the mayor of Rocky Point, or Puerto Penasco, to facilitate filming in those parts of Mexico. And a lot of the credit of this belongs to Felipe Garcia, who is the president of Visit Tucson, who had the vision that since Arizona, quite frankly, does not have a beach, and the Sea of Cortez has some of the most beautiful beaches on the planet, and they're also not as familiar. Hollywood's been shooting Malibu since the 50s. So the ability for Hollywood to find pristine beaches, and for Southern Arizona, focusing in the Tucson market, to export labor and to export expertise and equipment. Monsoon Productions, who is based in Tucson, I think something like 38% of their rental business comes from projects that are south of the border, and the owner of that company was involved with Run Coyote Run. So it's inevitable. We are good neighbors. We've been good neighbors in all things, and there's a history there. And the film office was shut down, as most people know, and then was brought back after a 6-year hiatus. And so it's a great thing that people have welcomed these ideas being resurrected. I met Peter when some 2 years ago. I think it was his first day on the job, and I was a producer in LA looking for a location. And my clients from Japan wanted to blow up fireworks at the monastery out there. And Peter
Nice.
was very kind in explaining to them that there is a lot that Peter can do, but there are, even for him, limits to his authority, and that was kind of one of them. So no fireworks at the monastery. So
All right, you again, Matthew, you're getting us into some rough water here, talking about the Arizona Film Office. And you mentioned that in what, 2000, when did the film office close?
2010, I believe. Yeah.
Arizona had and we're going to get into incentives and tax rebates and so forth. Arizona did have a plan, again, you guys are the experts, correct me if I'm wrong, but most states, locales all around the world have incentives for producers, financial incentives to come in to shoot. And Arizona had one and they closed it, and then they reopened it in 2016. And when they closed it, I think in my research prior to the closing, correct me if I'm wrong, you two guys, Arizona was the third most popular film location in the country, behind New York and California. And after they closed it, we had bottom. 2016, we reopened it. Matthew Earl Jones came back in, and I think there's a quote that's probably hanging in your office, Matthew. I inherited a hat and a pen and not much else.
It was actually a pen. I had a lapel pin. It wasn't a pen. I guess I didn't enunciate well, but I inherited a hat and a lapel pin. But
so what did you do, Matthew, to get it going again?
So first of all, I was certainly not the film commissioner when it closed, and I was not involved in any of those things. What I did and what I continue to do is, from day one, I reached out to the Tucson Film Office. I reached out to the Phoenix Film Office. I reached out to the Flagstaff Film Office. I reached out to people who were far more experienced at being a film commissioner than I was. I, know the industry, but it's a different ballpark being on this side. And everyone, starting with my first call to Peter and Shelley, were very willing to help and share their expertise. And I'd like to say there's a really good coalition where we're all supporting each other. And I think that's what Arizona needs to do, to be back to number 3, which I think is something very, very possible. Considering most people are leaving New York and LA, we might be able to place a little higher.
Chance you guys can hear me?
Yes.
Hey.
Okay, I guess third time's a charm.
All right. So let's ask Freddy a question about his role in office. Freddy, when you took over your office, and I'm not sure when that was, what did you see as the major challenges and goals that you wanted to achieve when you first took office?
Entonces, Freddy, vamos a hablar de tu posición en tu oficina, porque Matthew dijo que fue muy difícil, que él solamente llegó con una pluma y no sin mucho apoyo, y después, pues Arizona fue como uno de los 3 mejores lugares para grabar, y se parece que ya está cambiando otra vez. ¿Cómo fue para ti cuando llegaste a tu posición y cuánto tiempo tienes con tu posición?
Bueno, como sabes, ya habíamos intentado hacer la comisión fílmica aquí en Sonora desde otra posición, desde turismo, y ahora estamos desde la Secretaría de Cultura, como es a nivel país, el gobierno de México, el IMCINE depende de la Secretaría de Cultura. Entonces, ahorita desde este enfoque estamos intentándolo ahora en esta nueva era desde la Secretaría de Cultura, y como sabes, pues no nomás una comisión fílmica, sino la Cineteca y el área de fondos y de formación para cineastas.
Okay, so he's saying that they have the Filmoteca, which is a new building down there, and that they started out directly with the tourist department with film, but they have now grown to be working directly with the government within the country. So So they're growing as well and getting more support at a level from the federal level versus just the tourism within the state.
And in preparation for this session, Freddie asked a question that I would like to ask him to answer that I think is extremely important, because we're talking about the 300-mile range that goes all the way from the New Mexico border through Phoenix, down to Hermosillo, out to the Sea of Cortez, and that kind of bubble there is what we're talking about. And you ask, how does the rest of the world see Sonora and Arizona, this region? Freddie, how would you answer that? How does the rest of the world see what we're trying to do here with this alliance?
Okay, so Freddie, tú tenías una pregunta como pensando en esta región entre como la frontera de Nuevo México hasta Phoenix, hasta Sonora, y como una zona de 300 millas, y ¿cómo está mirando esta zona de Sonora y la frontera del mundo?
Sí, bueno, yo te diría que si ya hace ratito lo comenté, son muchos los proyectos que se han trabajado de manera conjunta desde los años 90, ¿no? Donde se produjeron algunos, estuvo Traffic, estuvo Fast and Furious, está también bueno, son de Mask of the Zorro, son algunas películas en los 90, pero desde antes ya ha habido una colaboración. En San Carlos se filmaron algunas películas, unos blockbusters de la época, que fue Catch 22, Lucky Lady, que siempre en su momento ha sido un trabajo, prácticamente el puente ha sido Arizona. Entonces yo sí lo veo como esta gran región, esta mega región que Matthew ha estado promoviendo mucho, y lo vamos a respaldar, ¿no? Es nuestra intención. Ahorita es una etapa de inicio para nosotros en esta nueva administración, y justo estamos en vías de hacer esta comisión ya más formal. Tenemos un gran edificio, eso ayuda, y tenemos un pequeño, de alguna manera, actividades de otras áreas del cine, pero a la comisión fílmica le tenemos que dar un impulso.
Okay, so that's going to be a lot to translate there, and I know that he mentioned that Matthew is covering a lot of this territory as well, and that since the 1990s they've had films like Traffic and Mask of Zorro and others that they filmed from San Carlos and up, and then I probably forgot a little bit of what else to translate, but that kind of covers most of it.
Bueno, sí, y bueno, lo importante, yo creo que fuimos una sola región hace siglos, y yo creo que tanto culturalmente como de paisajismo, ¿no? Somos ese gran desierto de Sonora, Arizona, que a nivel mundial justo es como nos ven, ¿no? No debe de haber esas 300 millas de frontera. Yo creo que en locaciones, si hablamos para un proyecto internacional, yo creo que eso un productor no lo ve. Esas 300 millas se vuelven invisibles cuando su producción necesita de un lado y del otro la frontera. Somos el único lugar probablemente del mundo que tenemos ese desierto con mar, y es esa extensión de Arizona que puede vender pues más opciones, no nomás lo que ofrece Arizona. Nosotros también no nomás es desierto, tenemos sierra, tenemos montaña, pues tú conoces obviamente todas las bellezas que están alrededor de Álamos, hasta selva baja, ¿no? Tenemos en Álamos, entonces hay muchísimo que ofrecer.
So again, Freddie is saying that there's a lot to offer, from mountains to the 300 miles of the frontera, of the border, that filmmakers who are coming into the region who want to film something in Sonora, they're not going to, that line is going to be invisible for them. And one thing that he pointed out that's pretty unique is the Sea of Cortez. You have the desert meets the sea, and that may be one of the only places in the world where you have the desert and a sea coming together like that. And so that's pretty important.
And John, if I may, I think one of the reasons, and not to speak for Felipe, but I think one of the reasons why he was an advocate of this is it's a real win-win. It's good for, it's a situation where, we are greater than the sum of the parts. I think that's the expression, but it provides a huge array of locations and opportunities for both states to share in the revenue. And it's great to have a win-win. And Gaston Pavlovich, whose cousin was Claudia, or is Claudia Pavlovich, the former governor of Sonora, and Gaston produced Silence and then The Irishman for Scorsese. He, also has lent his reputation to this concept. So I think it's, I think now that we're past COVID, knock on wood, I think we can once again pick up this relationship and it can bear fruit.
Thank you so much, guys. Matthew, I'd like to start another line of questioning here. When you took office, Peter, Freddy too, one of the key things that you do, and Matthew, you had to do when you first took office, you said that one of your major initiatives, of course, was to pitch Arizona to producers, the filmmakers. So my question is kind of simply, what did you say to them? And Peter, when you get your elevator pitch with a producer, what do you say about filming in Arizona? What do you throw at them?
I tell people we have the most diverse topography in the entire country. We're on the border with the entertainment capital of the world. We're so close that you can travel and work on the same day. There's very few places you can do that. That we have a fantastic professional labor force and crew base and talent pool. And one of the things that we have worked on is to pull those resources together in databases that are easy for people to find. That's something, we speak a lot about the HBO project, and the producer said to both Peter and said to myself, and also said on a panel for a webinar about 2 weeks ago, that the single biggest cost is if you can hire locally, if you can source things locally. If you do have to bring things from LA, as Peter can attest, the fact that we are so close gives us a strategic advantage over other neighboring states. But the reality is I think, and I speak from being in commerce, so what we're really about is local people getting hired, local businesses getting hired. And Peter, in his presentation that he made, listed, hundreds of people, hundreds of companies, just, the benefit. And that's our infrastructure. So when I talk to people, I sell our great natural resources and our infrastructure, which is crew and the vendors. And we spent the last 5 years trying to reconnect them. When you have a state film office go away, a lot of times that kind of being able to talk to different film commissions goes away. The film commissions, especially Tucson and Phoenix and Flag, really took on a leadership role when the state film office was closed. And not only did they do that, but they were all of them were very open to sharing that information and kind of handing that stress back to me, but are very supportive. So that's what I say to people. That's my that's a little more than 30 seconds, but I'm enthusiastic about what Arizona has to offer.
Well, I'm going to have to keep the watch on Peter. I know where he's going to go with this, but Peter, what's your elevator pitch to producers?
So pretty much the same thing Matthew says. I'll also add Tucson especially has great weather, and we have a really great crew base. We're particularly strong in the art department and grip and lighting personnel and equipment. They can use students from the University of Arizona and Pima Community College. And that's always a good thing. Ease, I'm not just saying this because I'm the film commissioner for Tucson. The city of Tucson is very film friendly, really supportive of filming. We've got a permit system that It's free of charge. We can process it in a few hours, really. So filmmakers are really happy about that. Because we don't have state film incentives, we mostly get calls from reality shows, and reality shows tend to shoot documentary style. They don't always know where they're going to be, and they're getting a lot of B-roll footage. So we've made the city permit make sure that it reflects that. And so it's just a quick blanket permit that they can fill out. It just takes a few minutes for them to fill it out, and then a couple of hours for us to process it. So the reality shows can kind of get on the street and start filming as soon as they're ready. They don't have to tell us necessarily where they are ahead of time, as long as they're not blocking streets and lighting fires or what have you. So we're able to do a lot of that. The pitch that is the most difficult is when the production is asking about film incentives. When HBO came and back in March of 2021, I wanted to make sure they knew that right out of the gate, because we have gotten a number of calls from major studios, major projects that asked if we had film incentives, and we don't. Tucson's very cost effective for filming, but even the savings that we find them can't match what an aggressive state film incentive would be able to do. So that's something we put out there right away. And that ties into the topic of film incentives, which I'm happy to talk about anytime. I don't know if that's part of the agenda for today, but
we're gonna get to that.
If we had state film incentives, we would be getting major projects in droves. We'd be getting even small indie films in droves. That would be a pitch that makes itself. We'd be able to go to film conferences, go up to producers at film festivals, because we would have that metaphorical golden ticket. We'd be able to say to producers, we've got great weather, great locations, great crew base, all the things you want, and film incentives. It's kind of the number one thing those projects are asking for.
Absolutely, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Freddie, what is your elevator pitch? Why should people film in Sonora?
Freddy, ¿por qué deben grabar en Sonora? Porque es importante.
Sí, bueno, yo creo que siempre nos dicen, ahorita que escuchaba a Peter, de un mal clima, de ese gran calor que hay en Sonora y Arizona, pero tiene muchas ventajas, ¿no? Tú como realizador.
There's a lot of heat in Sonora. There's a lot of heat in Arizona, but there's also a lot of advantages as well.
Pero la gran ventaja es eso, que no hay lluvia, se convierte en una ventaja el resto del año. Y la verdad, y bueno, esa luz maravillosa que para ustedes como realizadores pues valoran, tiene muchas ventajas, aparte de una mano de obra, yo creo que ya calificada y mucho más económico que el resto de Estados Unidos, de este lado.
It's also much more economic to be filming in Sonora than it is in the United States.
Ya. Hay también, y eso me gustaría recalcar, que esta ventana, digamos, de Sonora o la Comisión Fílmica en Sonora, pues somos ese enlace también con las diferentes comisiones fílmicas que hay en el país. Cada estado tiene una comisión fílmica y nosotros estamos en una red en constante relación, que siempre podemos ser ese brazo para cualquier persona de Arizona o el resto de Estados Unidos quiera filmar en otro estado.
Of film commissions every state in Mexico, and they have good communication, and they can share those with the United States.
I want to, we'll wrap things up here in a few minutes on the incentive question, and we'll go out with a real blast. But before we do that, I want to turn again to an issue that I find very fascinating and interesting, especially where we are and where Freddie is, and that has to do with our indigenous communities and how they participate in filming and training opportunities, employment, and so forth. I read, I think, Matthew, that when you first took over office, one of your major initiatives was to reach out to the Navajo community to do some training and updating of skills and so forth for the Navajo community, so they could be ready to be hired. Peter, you mentioned the story about the electric company wanting to come in and blow up your set of fireworks in front of the mission. You know, we have large indigenous film communities. We have native populations that are just as hungry for work as anybody else. What's your perspective on this issue in terms of where we are in Arizona and Sonora in terms of getting native populations involved, training, workforce development, and sensitive issues where the big guys from Hollywood come in and they want to do crazy things on native land? How do you deal with issues like this? Matthew?
Well, about 6 months ago, Sandra Watson, who is the president and CEO of the Arizona Commerce Authority, signed an agreement on behalf of the Film Office and the entire ACA, but it was specific to the Film Office and the Navajo Nation. It was signed by President Nez of the Navajo Nation, where provisions are for the State Film Office to work with Navajo Nation television and film. And the MOU basically created the ability for that to happen, because the Navajo Nation obviously is a sovereign nation. It's like, making an agreement with the state of Sonora. So there has to be that mechanism where governments can approve that process. So an agency with the Commerce Authority and an agency with the Navajo Nation can work together. That now being in place, we're hoping when our training program restarts in our new fiscal year, which will be July 1, that there's a definite outreach to the Navajo Nation. Their nation has only recently opened back up because of the COVID restrictions. So we signed this agreement, but we had been working with them for the last 3 or 4 years, sending projects up there, movies that shot on the Navajo Nation and, bought 1,300 hotel nights in Wilcox. So it's been a win-win situation. It was finalized, and then, COVID actually really has put kind of the brakes on it. We obviously respect their right to determine the rules for filming on their land. They now are back open. They still have some restrictions with crew size. And so when they feel that they are ready to invite people back onto their land, we are ready to assist them and to help promote them. We list their locations on the state website. We list Navajo Nation television and film on our state website. So you can find all the resources that they can provide linked directly to our website. But we hope to do joint projects together. 28% of the land in the state of Arizona is under tribal jurisdiction. It's some of the most beautiful land on the planet. And I share your agreement that if Hollywood wants to film on tribal land, much like if they want to film in the state of Arizona, they have an obligation, and it's to their interest to hire locally. So we definitely want to see that we can help Indigenous people acquire those skills so they can work on projects that could happen on their land.
Peter, what's going on here in Tucson?
We don't get a lot of calls for filming on native lands. We do get now and then calls for Native American actors. So we certainly assist with that. I'm quite envious of the state of Oklahoma. They just passed a film incentive a couple of years ago, maybe even sooner than that. And it's opened up a lot of filming avenues for the state of Oklahoma, particularly in telling Native American stories. There's a show on Hulu called Reservation Dogs that was strictly greenlit because Oklahoma now, where the story is set, had film incentives to offer to make it happen. Or the Martin Scorsese film that's going to be coming out this Christmas, Killers of the Flower Moon, set in Oklahoma, filmed in Oklahoma. And again, that happened because of film incentives. So my hope would be when Arizona gets film incentives, maybe we'll be able to open up that frontier to offer to filmmakers, and the Tohono O'odham tribe and the Yaqui tribe here in our region will be able to tell their stories. That would be great.
Freddy, down there in Sonora, do you get, I'm just emphasizing for effect, when you get the American production company that might be not as sensitive to native culture and value and tradition and want to do some crazy things, how do you deal with that kind of situation?
Entonces, Freddy está preguntando si cuando tienen producciones de los Estados Unidos y quieren hacer algo en la tierra de los indígenas, Pero si no tienen respeto, ¿qué van a hacer ustedes? ¿Cómo van a reaccionar? Ok, estás en mute, Freddy.
Sorry. Me gustaría primero comentar, en Sonora hay 8 grupos de indígenas, ¿no? Grupos originarios.
So they have 8 different indigenous groups in Sonora.
Yes. Y bueno, aparte, mucha gente quiere filmar en estos lugares, pero ahorita estamos promoviendo también a través de un fondo que hay de IMCINE para que filmen los mismos grupos sus historias. Son apoyos de hasta $1 millón por proyecto.
Okay, so they have up to $1 million pesos from IMCINE to support these projects. ¿Puedes repetir?
Sí.
¿Qué va a hacer IMCINE?
Sí, es un fondo, un apoyo que hay de hasta $1 millón por proyecto, y es para que filmen sus películas desde las comunidades.
Okay, so they get support of up to $1 million pesos in order to film in these communities, these different indigenous communities in Sonora.
Sí, y bueno, y por otro lado, sí tenemos ahorita una producción, esperemos, ahí grande. No podemos revelar ahí a la producción, pero sí estamos ahorita trabajando un scouting para una película de un director y actor muy famoso americano.
Okay, so they've got a new production coming in. They're doing scouting. It's a famous American. They're getting ready to hopefully shoot something in one of those areas.
Excellent, guys. I want to kind of get us into the twilight zone here on the incentive issue. But first of all, in talking with Peter, he wrote a kind of an interesting thing that I'd like to start out first before we get into incentives, and that he talks about the easy sell. Peter, what's an easy sell?
The easy sell would be our proximity to Los Angeles, for instance. I mean, we have several things, but the first one that pops to mind is our proximity to Los Angeles. When HBO was filming here, they really loved that on the weekends when they were off, they could catch a quick flight back to LA to be at home to water their plants or see family or a birthday party or whatever it was. The film Three Kings, which shot out here in, I should know the year, 2001 or 2. I'm sorry, I'm not remembering. It's starring Ice Cube, Mark Wahlberg, and George Clooney. We found them a location a little bit south of Casa Grande, an abandoned mine where Warner Brothers could build an Iraqi village. One of the major selling points for Warner Brothers was at the time, George Clooney was still on the show ER, where he got his big break. And so he could film his ER scenes in Los Angeles and then quickly fly to Tucson within an hour and change, and then get to Casa Grande, be on the set, film his stuff there, and then fly back to LA. It was a major selling point. Our proximity to Los Angeles was a huge boon. So that's an easy sell for us every time.
Good example. Very good. Thank you. Okay, guys, let's spend a few minutes. We're close to 4 o'clock. Let's spend a few minutes talking about the incentive situation here in Arizona, and then we'll open it up for a few questions after that. So, Peter, do you want to give us a summary here as to what's going on? Where are we, and what's at stake?
Sure, I could talk about this all day and night.
I've got the stopwatch on you, but
okay, I'll be really fast. Jason Lucky asks, what are the major obstacles keeping Arizona from having the volume of productions like Atlanta or Chicago? It's film incentives. It's the number one thing those major studios want. When this film incentives bill dropped, I set up a Zoom call with the senator who wrote the bill, Senator Gowan from Sierra Vista. And I think it was 7 or 8 major studios, Disney, Netflix, Viacom, Warner Brothers. I just wanted to make sure that the senator understood, here are these studios, and they all told him, we will come to Arizona if this bill passes. We want to film in Arizona. It's closer, it's more cost effective. It's just going to be better for us all the way around, but we need those film incentives. So it's the number one obstacle keeping us from getting the amount of filming that Georgia has and New Mexico and North Carolina, Oklahoma, Louisiana, all those states have passed film incentives. We need to have some too. So we've got to build its course in its way through our legislature. Hopefully it'll pass. We need your voice to reach out to the legislature to let them know that you want it. So if you need more information about that, call Film Tucson and we'll walk you through the process of making your voice heard on that.
Matthew, what's the maximum rebate on qualified expenses and services?
You know, because the Arizona Commerce Authority may be involved in this, I have recused myself from any conversations on that. And Peter does a great job. So I appreciate you respecting that situation.
Understood, absolutely. Well, let me play devil's advocate a little bit. I'm as neutral as you guys are, and I understand completely the situation, but typically the reaction that I've heard in my experience, we say, gee, you got that duster coming in that's going to spend $15-20 million. Why should the fat cats at HBO get that rebate? We have homeless here in Tucson. We've got schools that need funding. We've got COVID and health issues. Why don't we put some of that money into these programs?
I can explain that because when we get a film production here, they are spending money at local businesses. They are eating out at restaurants. They're staying at hotels. All that money is getting pumped into our economy. And so the citizens of Tucson and Arizona, but obviously I'm Tucson centric, that money then is spread out throughout the state and taxes are paid and cars are bought and mortgages are paid. So it helps our economy all the way around for programs with the homeless and everything else you mentioned. It's taking money from Hollywood and just dumping it into our community. To me, it's a no-brainer. Like we've got to get that money here. It's really important. So that's easy.
Another one is, again, we got Paramount, we got Tom Cruise, we got, the fat cats, the big boys coming in. And I think maybe in this bill, I don't know for sure, but in many of them, salaries are rebatable expenses. And so why should Tom Cruise get 15-20% back when people here are struggling to get the minimum wage?
Got it. Well, ours actually doesn't have that. That's a different, some states have money that goes towards that. Ours doesn't. Ours is focused more on infrastructure. So developers could come in and build sound stages, and that would make permanent jobs there. They could build post-production facilities. There's more permanent jobs there. And that lures the film industry here because they get the incentives and they have the sound stages to use. So I understand the argument against incentives as a whole. And we could have that topic, we could have that discussion, but bottom line is Arizona has gone after Amazon, Intel, any number of companies over the years. And that's a great thing because it brought jobs. This is no different. This is just another industry bringing jobs to our state. Why not go after it? It's $1 billion industry happening right next door to us in New Mexico. Why not bring some of that here? There's no reason not to. Even the smallest amount of incentives that we would put forward is going to lure some production here. So if we just do a minimum amount and just keep building it every year like other states did, there's no reason why we can't be as much of a success, if not more, than New Mexico.
And one last question again, and I'll take the heat that you had to take yesterday, Peter. And when you were trying to, and you did a very nice job trying to straddle that neutral zone, and yet address key issues. And another one is there's a political dimension to this. Let's be honest. And some people here think, gee, why should we be sending money to these limousine liberals in Hollywood when we're kind of a straight up conservative state here, hardworking people? Why send that money out of state to these guys?
To me, that argument's kind of silly. It tells me that it's people that have never really spent time on a film set. Because when you go to the film set, you see, I'm going to use the phrase blue collar, people building sets, truckers, drivers. it's not the liberal elite that people think it is. There might be on some level with the creative people, the producers and the writers and so forth, but the majority of people on that film set are blue collar people. My dad worked in construction for 40 something years. I know that world and I know those people, and they are on that set. So it's not about trying to pit Americans against Americans, because that's just BS political nonsense. We've got to stop doing that. That's not what this is about. We're not going to war with California. This is just about getting jobs to Arizona. Bottom line, that's all it is. It's dollars and cents, nothing more.
And Freddie, what's the incentive situation down in Sonora?
Freddy, ¿ustedes tienen incentivos en Sonora?
Sí, bueno, ahorita se está trabajando con apoyos, con incentivos federales de todo México, pero la intención sí es en el corto, mediano plazo instaurar unos incentivos aquí en Sonora. Actualmente no.
Okay, so they have federal incentives that they have, but they're working on getting more specifically for Sonora as well.
Excellent. One last question, guys, back to maybe a more neutral topic. And I don't want to overlook this aspect of what you guys are doing, which is so important. What is going on with the major film schools here in state? Matthew, what's going on up at Arizona State with their film program? And Peter, at U of A, are you guys, what kind of relationships do you have with the film schools? What are they doing to help the cause, so to speak? Matthew?
So we are working primarily with the community colleges, Pima Community College. We did one last year, and of the participants, half of them got jobs on Duster. So we had a success right there. It was very immediate. Peter came and spoke to the students. We've got several other community colleges on board for this program. Each school is agreeing to host 2 seminars per year of 40 students each. That means with 5 schools, we put 400 people into the workforce, and in 5 years, we put 2,000 people in there. Those are numbers that I, testified to in an ad hoc committee before the bill was launched, kind of as a background to what the state, what I can do. I can work on workforce and trying to organize things. The community colleges seem to have more of a mandate to create jobs and vocational training as opposed to the 4-year universities. On that subject though, ASU just opened up the Sidney Poitier New American Film School. They're building an amazing facility in the city of Mesa. I took the tour when you still needed to have a hard hat on. I am anxiously awaiting the opening of that in the next month or so. U of A has a fantastic film program. I've been fortunate enough to work with some of their students and also to talk to faculty. And I think there's a place for all aspects of education. I think we also need to really look at even the really good programs at the high school level, so that we are, one of the things I said when I was hired is that I wanted to work at stopping the brain drain. If our brightest people are told that they can learn their craft in Arizona, but they have to go to California or New York to practice it, then we'll always be playing catch up. And so I take that very seriously. And especially now that in the post-COVID world, half of, the 2 places people are leaving the most are New York City and Los Angeles. I'd like to see somebody at a really great high school program, go to college in Arizona and become part of our new digital workforce. And that will be as important as any other things that we've discussed and things like that. I think we need a whole kind of solution of people working together. As Peter alluded to, education has a crucial part. We are starting with the community colleges because they're able to adapt faster.
Peter, anything about UA or the community colleges here in Tucson that you'd like to add on to that?
Sure. We work a lot with the University of Arizona. They've got some great students there, and we've got a program in place there. We always reach out to Justine Collins, who runs the internship program. So we get a project coming in. They want to get some PAs on the job. Obviously, they're going to hire some locals and pay them. But we also have the option where they can use students from the University of Arizona. The students work for free and get class credit. So the project gets, let's be honest, free labor. And the students get a great notch on their belt career-wise. So it's actually a great thing. We also work a lot with Robert Loomis and his team there. They've got some great students, many of whom were hired to work on the HBO shoot when it was here. So that just shows you the level of greatness that these students are operating at. It's really nice. And then we've, pre-COVID, we were staying in touch with a lot of U of A alumni that graduated from the university and were making their way through the film industry in Los Angeles. We're going to get back to doing that, and hopefully some public events in Los Angeles with U of A alum, because we want to make sure they keep Tucson and Arizona, of course, in mind for future projects, especially if we get the film incentives. That's going to be a #1 goal.
And Freddie, what's going on in education down in Sonora vis-a-vis schools for and educational opportunities for students in film?
Freddy, ¿qué está pasando en Sonora con las escuelas y oportunidades para estudiantes que tienen interés en el cine? Y no sé
Sí.
qué.
Sí, sí tenemos una gran relación. Yo creo que la mejor escuela es la práctica. Mientras tengamos más proyectos, se va a ir formando más, ¿no? Todo el crew, pero la ventaja ahorita de tener la Cineteca también bajo mi cargo, estamos trayendo mucha gente a dar talleres, gente de México y trabajando con las escuelas también.
So he's saying that they're working with schools, they're bringing people from Mexico City. They have this new center called the Cineteca. Unfortunately, I haven't been down to it yet, but I hear that it's amazing, and it sounds like it's a space that they can have workshops and opportunities for young filmmakers.
Here's a question. Thank you, Freddie. Here's a kind of a response to what's said in this area. The colleges can provide a fabulous opportunity to raise awareness and support by their staff and students. Perhaps the AZ-FDMC Indie Project Phoenix Film Festival and the APA could work together to that end.
John,
yes.
John, if I may, one of the strategic partners, the MOU is not actually signed, so I try not to talk about things before they're actually signed, but one of the key components of the state's training program is that the APA will be waiving the requirement of 3 recommendations that people take the program. And also that instead of a 2-day shoot like we did in Pima Community College, which kind of felt like a capstone project, it was suggested by the head of the film program over at Glendale Community College that what they would actually do is have to, within 90 days of doing our 5-day, they'd have to complete 2 days as interns with a local production company. And that as part of the agreement between the APA and the State Film Office, the APA will be providing those companies. This way the state knows that the people who take the training program are going to be working with credible companies and not used and abused. And what the APA gets is direct access to those 2,000 people that we're going to be training in the next 5 years. So,
Thank you for that clarification, Peter.
so Marcelo, that's already Stephanie Lucas, who is the head of the film program at Glendale Community College, whose brilliant idea that was not my idea. I don't want to take credit for her idea, but she's an APA member. I believe her company is listed with the APA. So that was her suggestion, and they were very happy to add that to the support that the APA is giving to the state's program.
Thanks so much for that. Well, guys, I think our delightful time together is about to come to an end. I thank you so much for participating. I thank you out there, those who are listening. Let's keep things going. I think your role as film commissioners is key. you're tireless in your promotion and your loyalty and your belief in what we're doing. And that's what I'd like to end with is what do you see in the next few years for production here in Arizona and in Sonora? In the next 3, 4, 5 years, what's going to happen? Freddy, let's start with you. What's the future like down there?
Okay, Freddy, ¿cómo está el futuro en Sonora? Pensando en entre 3 y 5 años, el futuro del cine de Sonora.
Bueno, primero me quisiera disculpar porque no sé si se han escuchado mucho ruido. Vengo de Tucson justamente y llegué a un restaurante a conectarme y hay muchos gritos, pero bueno.
So he's just apologizing. He's at a restaurant. He had to stop and connect, and he's had a great weekend in Tucson. We really enjoyed having you, Freddy. But he is in transit back to Sonora right now.
Well, have a safe trip, and hope to see you again soon.
Yeah. Y bueno, respondiendo la pregunta, la ventaja de nosotros es que ahorita va iniciando este gobierno, son 6 años del nuevo gobernador, vamos llegando en este equipo y bueno, todo lo que se está construyendo, aunque no pueda avanzar mucho con Matthew, pero van a hacer cosas que están gustando mucho. Queremos hacer una nueva ley, hacer una ley de filmaciones y estamos trabajando para estructurar de mucho mejor manera una comisión fílmica.
So they want to come up with a better manner of having the film commission, and their advantage is that they have this new governor, and their governors in Mexico have 6 years, so they'll have 6 years that they get to work together.
Thank you so much. Peter, aside from a vast increase in salary, what do you see happening over the next couple of years?
That's not really my concern. Here's what I see for the future. I'm going to be very optimistic. Everybody watching is going to be calling their representatives when the film incentives bill goes to the House, which we believe will happen next week. They're going to tell all their friends and neighbors and relatives to do the same. Everybody's going to rally together to get this film incentives bill passed. And then all kinds of great things are going to happen after it passes. All the studios are going to come calling. All the independent cinema that hasn't been filming here will come as well. TV shows, everything. It's going to be fantastic. We just got to get these incentives passed.
Thank you, Peter. Matthew, take it from here. Close it out.
So I see continued growth with the industry. I see more activity and greater cooperation with our counterparts in Mexico and also in the indigenous communities. And hopefully in the next 3 years, people who are seriously thinking about pursuing a career in this industry will not have to leave the great state of Arizona to do so.
Well said, all the way around. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the afternoon. Thank you, John Sheedy. Thank you, guys. And good luck. I hope all those dreams come true, all those wishes. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Good to see you, buddy. Hola, nos vemos pronto.